So this week is about how you can begin your journey. Last week I talked about my journey. This week it's about yours. One of the primary characterizations of my journey was a pretty extreme desperation. And hi, Yvonne. That isn't necessarily necessary. Lots of people have started without it, but a lot of us who began jumped right in, largely out of desperation. It also seems to me it requires some hope that it might work, even if it's the faintest hope. Because I didn't really believe this when I began, but I thought it might work. And if you're desperate enough, it doesn't take too much hope. The next thing is that I was joking last week about stubbornness, and it's not so much that it takes stubbornness as it takes willpower, particularly to start. I mean, if you're at this for a while, it's not such a big deal. It becomes just your normal everyday life and habit. But when you first start, it's a big change, and it's going to take a good bit of willpower, at least for the first few days. On the bright side, my friend Pete was here this weekend and was talking about how a year in, he just, like at work, if he gets the munchies or whatever, it's just easy to say to himself, well, I could eat as much as I want when I get home. And it's so quick that your hunger hormone gets retrained that you're not always having to struggle. And that's a very good thing. Desperation might not be necessary. It really isn't, because my friend Robin in the group, she started with less weight to lose than I still have to lose. And she was wildly successful. After she hit her goal, from that time when she hit maintenance till a year later, she completely reshaped her body, which apparently had more to do than losing weight. It had a great deal to do with exercise and wanting to feel strong. So, I mean, you don't actually have to be desperate. I mean, obviously Amanda was desperate. Anyone who's considering bariatric surgery, I presume, is relatively desperate. I don't know if she had much hope when she began. She basically decided to throw everything she ever knew about weight loss at this in order to manage regrets she might have around the surgery, which of course she didn't have. So what does seem to be necessary is discomfort from where you are, that you don't want to be where you are, you want to be somewhere better. But the big question is, does that discomfort actually get you to start, and how long does it take? Some people are in the group for 6 months or a year before they start. And we know because they post and say, I've been here 6 months and you guys have inspired me. I'm going to start. I think maybe, well, they weren't desperate. And I also think it might have taken the social proof of seeing so much success to actually give them some hope. So those are the three things that I really think are necessary. A discomfort from where you are, some kind of hope that it will work, and the willingness to really invest some willpower, at least the first few days until it becomes easier. There are also a lot of people who just don't ever seem to start. And I mean, I don't know this for absolute certain, but Amanda was mentioning recently that half the people who have signed up for the 3-day challenge and are therefore on her mailing list have never joined the group. And some of them may be off doing it on their own, which is fine, of course. But I mean, it looks like a whole bunch of people never start. Hopefully they'll get enough emails from her to build some of that hope eventually. So what are we actually talking about? Starting, which I'm putting in here because I'm assuming everyone isn't from Eat Like a Bear. Basically, to reverse diabetes, you're going to have to go on a relatively low-carb diet. There can be quite a number of ways to do this. My friend Pete, who I mentioned earlier, basically does what's called carnivore, which basically means he eats like meat, eggs, cheese, butter, stuff like that. And we also have successful people in the group who are doing this from a vegetarian viewpoint. I personally like the ridiculously big salad framework for a number of reasons. It's sort of the in the middle one, which is kind of funny when I think about it, because I think of myself as an extreme person, and here I am in the middle. It is very heavily plant-based, which is good because when you eat a whole pile, low carb, low calorie vegetables, you get very, very, very full. Whether it's cooked or raw, those vegetables are primarily water and fiber, and they're not going to affect your blood glucose. but they're going to be very filling and satisfying. For me, I definitely need a chunk of meat on there for it to be a fully satisfying meal. And then depending again on if it's cooked or raw, with cooked, there'll be some type of sauce, and with raw, there'll be some kind of dressing. And this is basically your source of fat. In addition to low carb, if you also happen to want to lose weight, being low calorie is useful as well. I mean, that's one of the reasons I really like the ridiculously big salad. If I can eat until I'm stuffed, like Thanksgiving level stuff, and lose weight, and like eat for, 1,000, 1,200 calories and be that full, that's a good thing. Another reason I personally prefer that framework. Now, keto itself, doing low carb did not work for me to reverse my diabetes because, as I covered last week, I actually spent most of 2 decades eating low carb, and my diabetes progressed until I needed insulin and had a heart attack and got on insulin and then needed more, and a whole bunch of other bad stuff happened. But when I added the concept of intermittent fasting to the keto diet, that absolutely blew my diabetes out of the water. All meds, I have normal blood glucose, sometimes a bit on the low side compared to people who do eat carbs. And that fasting just made a huge, huge difference. For me, that has most often been a 1 meal a day model where I eat basically the ridiculously big salad or similar cooked meals in about an hour each day. But there's a lot of variations of that. I mean, I've seen people reverse their diabetes doing 2 meals a day or alternate day fasting. There's a lot of ways you can approach intermittent fasting, but just as low carb reduces the amount of insulin you need, fasting reduces it way down. Reducing insulin is what's going to turn around your insulin resistance. It does take some time, but it's really just like people who are addicted to a drug, that they become resistant and need more and more. Well, we've become resistant to insulin, and in order to overcome that resistance, we need to really reduce our insulin. For me personally, I was very desperate, and I also have a relatively extreme case, or had a relatively extreme case of diabetes. Sometimes I did extended fasting, which also has variations. I do not recommend anyone fast for longer than a week, but basically it doesn't have to be anything anywhere near that extreme either. If you get to where you're eating 1 meal a day and that becomes your habit and that's what you're accustomed to, really it's an extended fast if you just miss 1 meal, which is kind of weird when you think about it. And a lot of people will do those shorter extended fast, 48 or 72. I still have been doing them on occasion. If my blood glucose starts being a bit higher than I like for a few days or that I'm accustomed to, I'll look at my next week and pick out a couple days to just skip food. Take a bit of a vacation from it. That gets my blood glucose right back where I want it. The main thing is that this requires a huge change in both eating, like how you eat, what you eat, when you eat, and even in the way you think about food. It's just a tremendous change in your life. And the problem with that is that change is scary, and nobody wants to change if they don't have to, because whatever you're doing, you're used to. Whether you like where you are or not, accustomed to where you are. You might be in pain, but still be comfortable because of where you are. And that's really the question. Are you still comfortable, or are you uncomfortable enough to risk change? We covered this. Change is scary, and there's a lot of things we can be afraid of. We can have a fear of deprivation, like, one of mine was, oh my God, am I not going to be able to eat pasta ever again? I'm Italian. How can I not eat pasta? There's also just the fear of hunger. When you hear people start talking about intermittent fasting or extended fasting, you kind of have the idea that you're going to be hungrier and hungrier and hungrier. And that's not really what happens. I mean, my first fast, I was hungry a few times the first day, and it got bad and then went away. And then the second day, I was freaking crazy hungry for two reasons. One, Dr. Fung said the second day is when your hunger hormone peaks. And so there might have been a bit of placebo going on there. But also because my home health aide was cooking, I remember this clearly, a meatloaf and mashed potatoes, which she thought was for me, but was pretty much going to just be for my husband. I don't recommend you do that when you're fasting. Have someone come over and cook yummy things in your house and make your whole house smell like it. The third day was pretty much just about the same as the first. I got hungry, it went away. I got hungry, it went away. But like the fourth day, there was just no hunger and it just went away for days and days. It's not what you think. I mean, it seems like you're just going to get hungrier and hungrier, but that doesn't happen to anyone I know of. Another fear people have about embarking on this journey is how the people around you might react. Is your doctor going to yell at you and tell you shouldn't be eating salads? Or is the nutritionist going to be telling you that, you should be eating 6 small meals a day and this is bad? Or you're going to lose weight, look better, feel better, and your spouse is going to suddenly get all jealous and insecure and uptight? And speaking of attention, are creepy guys going to start hitting on you again? I mean, I didn't get this fat and old to have creepy guys still hitting on me. Now, I have to admit, this last year or so, I've been flirted with more than once, but not creeped on. So that worked out. But I mean, if you change, everybody in your environment is going to react to you differently. And that can be intimidating when you think about it. The other thing is just, thinking this is too weird and extreme. Because, I mean, it is weird. Let's say I'm going to not eat bread, potatoes, pasta, rice, crackers. These are standard foods that everyone eats. And I seem so extreme that I just don't eat any of those things. And the whole notion of eating one meal a day, when we're told so many times that we need 6 small meals a day, that's the best thing. Basically, you're painting yourself as a weirdo, if your 1 meal a day is in the evening and your coworkers go out to lunch, well, you can still go and have a cup of coffee. That's what I recommend. I always recommend coffee. I always drink coffee. But not wanting to deal with that, or not wanting to deal with, family get-togethers, or even the family you live with. Is everyone going to think you've gone nuts? I know when Amanda first told me how she lost weight, I did kind of think she'd gone nuts. I kind of thought this sounded borderline like an eating disorder, and it seemed kind of extreme. But I look back now and I think to myself, what really was extreme? Her making a big change to improve her health and well-being and her abilities and to get her life back, or me continuing to do what I thought was the right thing, even though it wasn't working, and was gradually killing me. What really is weird or extreme there? I know I prefer it on this side of the weirdness spectrum. Of course, y'all know I have an issue with I don't have too much issue with weird. Hair is a good evidence of that. And then the last one is that people that I could think of that people are commonly afraid of is fear of failure. And there's 2 ways we're afraid of that. We're afraid this plan isn't really going to work. It worked for lots of people, but not me because I'm different somehow. Or we're afraid this does work. I believe it works, but I'll never be able to do it, which will make me a failure. And I don't know which of those fears is worse, being afraid that the plan will fail you or being afraid that you're going to fail it. And hello, Anna and Amanda. On to the next slide. So basically, for anyone out there who has not yet started, the question I have for you is, what are you most afraid of? It might be one of the things I just mentioned. Might not. It might be something entirely different because I'm not you, so I don't know what you're afraid of. But change is scary. But what of all the different things you might be afraid of, what is the one you're most afraid of? What is the one that really stops you from deciding, okay, today is the day, not tomorrow, not Monday, not the first of the next month. Today, I'm going to do this. What stops you? What are you most afraid of? And then when you take that fear, whatever it is, ask yourself, if this fear comes true, what's the worst that can really happen? I mean, a lot of times when we're nervous about things or have anxiety, if you think about it, like, what is the worst that can actually happen? It's usually not a big deal. I mean, I'm nervous. I was real nervous last week, less so now. I'm nervous about doing Facebook Lives. Oh, guess what? What is the worst that can happen? Really, what is the worst that can happen? So it doesn't go as great as I want, or I stumble, or I stutter, or people don't show up, except I asked several of you to take care of that fear. But really, what is the worst that can happen? Because, like, if you feel deprived, you don't have to. First of all, you don't have to feel deprived. But second of all, you can start and then stop. No one's going to make you do this for the rest of your life. I mean, really, of what your fear is, how bad could it be? I mean, I was going to be fat and diabetic whether I did this or not. So, like, it was worth a shot. Worst was going to happen was I was going to stay fat and diabetic, which wasn't all that terrible given that's where I was. And then the next question I'd ask you is, if the worst that you can imagine happens, would this really ruin your life? I mean, okay, suppose, yes, creepy guys do start hitting on you again. Can you deal with that? How would you handle that? What resources would you need to deal with that? There's no way you're going to start this and your fear comes true and you're going to like end up with no friends, no family, homeless, unemployed, and destitute. It's not going to be. What would it really take if your worst fear comes true to deal with it? Okay. But then there is just the question of, what if you don't want to? Well, first of all, I'm not your mother. I can't make you. And actually, I know I'm not your mother because I gave birth once and she died. But I could never even make her do things. So I can't make you do anything. You're perfectly safe from that. I'm not going to talk you into anything you don't want to do here. And in fact, I can tell you that I can't talk you into anything you don't want to do. My sister has a real life friend who's a diabetic, and she asked me to friend her on Facebook. And I did. The purpose was I was supposed to help her manage her diabetes, give her some advice. And I suggested a couple of books to her about that I thought were the most useful at the time. And she didn't follow that advice at all. And over the course of a couple of years, she got a really bad infection in her leg. And I suggested she see an actual wound doctor, not her PCP. And then I suggested that she look into hyperbaric oxygen treatment, which is known to help with extremity healing in diabetics. And she didn't listen to that either. And basically, she had her leg amputated. And given that she doesn't drive and walking is her only form of locomotion, this was pretty extreme. And I kept reading about, how bad the prosthetic was and how much pain she was in. And my sister asked me to talk to her again, and I did. And I told her, I said, this is the last time. It's been over the course of years, but I'm not just going to keep nagging this woman. But by the time I did go speak to her, I didn't just know a lot about controlling blood glucose. I knew how to reverse my diabetes, and I told her that. And I told her where to find me, and she did not respond. So that was it. End of that. I'm not a nag. I can't make anybody do anything they don't want to do. Neither could anyone else, because the last time I saw a post from her, she was complaining about her new endo who wanted her to change the way she ate. And she didn't think this was fair. And she thought her endo was mean. And she got a lot of support from people who felt her doctor should support her where she was. And frankly, I quit unfollowing her at that point. I'm like, I can't make you change. Your doctor can't make you change. You're very determined not to. I think she had in her head confused, because she is not a white middle-class woman, that the unfairness of society around her was something she'd deal with all the time. And I think she thought of diabetes similarly. But the problem with that is, this is biology. There's not, you can't do anything about it. You can go out there and rail against society for discrimination, but that's just how it is. A year or two into our marriage, I tested Steve's blood glucose. Basically, like doing a homemade oral glucose tolerance test, except he ate a lot more glucose than they give you on the test. He ate 1/6 of a 2-layer frosted cake. And I tested his blood glucose several times over the course of several hours, and it never got as high as 80. And I will tell you that is unfair. And I am jealous of his blood glucose response. But I don't get to have it. And being angry at the universe or at genetics or whatever is not going to make much difference. I joke sometimes, and it is a joke, that my mom selfishly kept her thin non-diabetic genes and let me have my father's fat diabetic genes. Well, that's how it is. That's what I've got. I have, as I often say, a crappy hand of cards. The dealer sucked. I can't do anything about it. And being pissed about it just doesn't help anything. The best I can do is play the cards that I've actually got, this hand, as best as I can. And being mad isn't going to change anything. And it's not going to help me. But doing the best I can with where I am, that will help me. That can make a big difference. Moving right along and grabbing another sip of coffee. I'm going to just read something. This is actually a post that I made to the group some time ago, because we have a lot of people who ask this question. How do I start? How do I begin? I've been here. I'm watching all these transformations. How do I get mine? Okay, so here's the post. What makes a caterpillar happily munching in my veggie garden decide to suddenly wrap themselves into a cocoon and melt down into a pile of goo? That doesn't look like a very pleasant thing to do, but it's necessary to earn its wings. It doesn't get to fly unless it embraces the change. Change is scary. If you're comfortable enough where you are today, you don't really have to do something that is hard and scary. So that's the question. Are you comfortable enough where you are today? Or is it uncomfortable enough to risk a change? Amanda has said that desperation is the lifeblood of this group, and that may be so. Those of us who were very desperate when we began jumped into the deep end of the pool and started swimming right away, never looking back. We did none of this standing at the edge, dipping our toes in. I don't know that even if it had existed and I'd known about it, if I'd have been willing to do this in my 20s or 30s, when my only reason would have been wanting to look hot. I had to get to the point of literally thinking I was dying before I was willing. I don't know the secret to get people to start without desperation, but I wish I did. I hate the idea that someone has to be as sick as I was before they begin, or has to go gain another 40 pounds and lose more mobility before they start. As I sit here typing, wondering what I can say to invite you to start today, right this minute, now, there's so much pain and suffering you can forgo if you just start immediately, but I know that's not motivating in the same way as actually suffering the pain and desperately wanting it to stop. How to convince someone to do it? If I knew no one on the planet would be fat or diabetic anymore, but I don't know how to give you my motivation. What I do know is this: change is scary. So what if you don't change? What if you just try a little experiment for 3 days and see how it feels for you? Because really, you can do anything for 3 days. You don't have to commit to anything more. You don't have to become a bear. And really, there's no fear of failure involved, because you can't fail the 3-day challenge. It's not intended for weight loss or reversing diabetes, but just to introduce you to this way of eating and see if it fits for you. It's almost like going on a first date. Need to fold my paper a little bit. You may be a bit nervous. You don't know if you're going to like this person or not, and if they'll like you, or how it will all work out. But it's just a bit of nervousness. It's not going to stop you from going. If you thought that before that date you had to decide if you were going to marry this person and how many children to have, well, that'd be a hell of a lot of stress. That date may change your life, but it also may just be a boring or uneventful evening. You don't have to decide before you've gone. So how about if you don't marry this change just yet, but try it out a little bit? If you don't want to continue, no harm, no foul. No one will hunt you down in the future and make you eat a salad. We are not the stalker kind of date, but you just might discover that you want to fly. And the butterfly stopped. So that is where I'm starting with, ending with the main topic of how to get started. I hope this is helpful to some of you. And I also need to ask, I plan to do these every week for a few weeks. I don't know, for some time. And I'd like to know which things you would most like to have me address. Longer questions that, I can talk about for 20 or 30 minutes. I have several choices up here on the screen. How to grind all the way to the end, how to deal with food compulsions, how to get motivation back if you've lost it, how to believe in your journey when your results kind of suck, how to build a big goal if you don't have one. We all know it's important to have a big goal, but some people say they don't. And any other topic that you think would help, because my entire purpose here is to help people as much as possible. So I need your input on what you would like to see me address.